I believe these are his initial comments on the field, right?
A short while ago, Broncos wide receiver Jeudy was walking by, and Steve called out to him, and he got a different reaction.
I called out to him because on my podcast, Cut To It, I just talked about guys that maybe have not showed up in a way or in a manner. And so the word that I've used to describe him in the past was a jag, just a guy. And so when I saw him, he's playing well. I wanted to say to him face to face, like, hey, I know I said some things in the past I probably shouldn't have, and I'm sorry. That's what I wanted to say to him. His response, Mike Robb and Bucky, was ninja.
Ninja?
Yes, I'm using the word ninja. I'm just using the word ninja. I don't mess with you. And it was a curse word. And so I was like, all right. And then he repeated it. So I'll say it again. I'm sorry that I said you were a jag, just a guy who's an average wide receiver that you used a first-round pick on that isn't doing anything. I hope today that you actually show up in a way that you haven't showed up in the last couple of years since they drafted you. So if you ever got a problem with Agent 89, I'm sorry for saying that you're an average wide receiver, that they eventually will move on. And when teams call me and asking, should they trade for you, I will say no, don't trade for Jerry Jeudy, because he's mentally unable to handle constructive criticism from people who watch specifically, can he be a wide receiver? He could be a wide receiver. He's a tier 3. Go back into the studio. I'm done now. Thank you.
Yo, stop. Before we say a single word, did you see that? Did you just see Steve Smith Sr. look directly into the camera on national television and tell Jerry Jeudy to his face that he is a tier 3 wide receiver, that he would tell every GM in the league not to trade for him, that he is mentally unable to handle constructive criticism? Because I need you to keep that moment locked in your brain for the next 10 minutes. Sit with it, let it marinate. Because what just happened in Cleveland during the 2026 NFL Draft, that moment just became the most prophetic sports take of the last 3 years. And Steve Smith Sr. already knew it before Jerry Jeudy even put the Browns uniform on. Welcome to Overtime Reports. I'm your host, Dre Fiver, and today we're getting into it because Jerry Jeudy's situation in Cleveland just went from uncomfortable to officially disrespectful, and I'm here for every single second of it. Let's set the table. The Cleveland Browns just completed what is quietly one of the best drafts in their recent history. They came out of the first round with Spencer Fano at offensive tackle, a massive investment in protecting their young quarterback. And then, they swung right back around and took wide receiver Casey Concepcion out of Texas A&M with the 24th overall pick. Slot receiver, sudden burst, chain mover, route technician, a legitimate weapon. Then, as if one receiver wasn't enough of a statement, Cleveland turned around on day 2 and grabbed Denzel Boston out of the University of Washington at pick number 39, a 6'4", 215-pound wideout who was so good that multiple analysts had him graded as a first-round talent, and the Browns scooped him up anyway. 2 receivers, back-to-back, first and second round. That is not a coincidence. That is a message. And everybody in Cleveland knows exactly who it was addressed to.
When the draft started, did you see how your playbook could open up more, with especially the 2 receivers?
Not yet. I haven't seen them yet. We'll have a better idea once they get here. Am I excited? Yes, I'm excited about the work that Andrew has done thus far. We have another pick left in his staff. I think it's been a great draft. But what matters is now once they get here, and then how we develop them and how we put them in the right places to let their talent shine.
Now, in the immediate aftermath of those 2 picks, Browns GM Andrew Berry walked up to the podium and did what every executive does when they know they've just shaken the roster. He lied with a smile. And look, I don't say that to be disrespectful to Andrew Berry, who is actually a smart front office mind. But when Berry came out and told reporters that drafting Concepcion and Boston would have 0 impact on Jerry Jeudy, and that Jeudy is, and I love this word choice, the team's bell cow, I cackled. I genuinely laughed out loud, because this is the oldest play in the GM handbook. This is the front office equivalent of patting a dog on the head right before you take him to the vet. Barry went on to talk about building the receiver room like a basketball team, multiple skill sets, speed, route running, contested catchability, separation, and said he was really pleased with the youth and talent in the group. Youth and talent. Two words that do not describe a 27-year-old receiver who just finished 72nd among 81 qualified wide receivers in overall grade from the analytics community. Just saying. Here's the thing about the bell cow comment. It is strategically brilliant public relations and it means absolutely nothing on the football field. Andrew Berry is not going to stand up there and say Jerry Jeudy is now our third option and we are building around younger talent. He cannot say that. That would cause a locker room incident before training camp even starts. So instead you get soft, pacifying language designed to keep Jeudy's ego intact just long enough for the depth chart to sort itself out naturally. And trust me, it will sort itself out because the tape does not lie. Let me give you the real numbers on Jerry Jeudy in 2025 because I think a lot of people have already started to forget how bad it actually got. Jeudy finished the season with a catch rate hovering right around 47%, and that ranked him 217th in the entire league among all qualified pass catchers, not 217th among wide receivers. Among all pass catchers, tight ends, running backs, slot guys, everybody. And he finished 217. He totaled just 50 receptions, 602 yards and 2 touchdowns despite playing all 17 games as the supposed number 1 receiver on the depth chart. The analytics community graded him as one of the least effective starters at his position in the entire NFL. And the drop numbers? According to multiple tracking services, he was tied for the most drops in the league at various points during the season, finishing among the worst in the league in that category by year's end. Now, Dre's personal take, I actually feel for Jeudy a little bit, and here's why. You genuinely cannot put up Pro Bowl numbers when your quarterback is posting a passer rating under 40 when throwing in your direction. That number was tracked all season, and it was historically bad. When the ball is arriving late, thrown off platform, or missing the window entirely, your catch rate is going to suffer. That is not entirely a Jeudy problem. Cleveland cycled through 3 different starting quarterbacks in 2025, Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders, and none of them were operating at a high level consistently. The offensive environment was broken from week 1, but here is where my sympathy ends. There have been broken offenses throughout NFL history with good receivers who still made plays. And Jeudy's drop rate was inexcusable regardless of the quarterback situation. You cannot lose footballs at that rate and expect to maintain number 1 receiver status in a room that is being aggressively restocked. And speaking of dropping footballs, let's get to Steve Smith Sr. because this man deserves his flowers today. Somebody get Steve Smith Sr. a trophy, a big one. Call it the Prophetic Take of the Year award and put his name on it in gold letters. Because after the Browns selected both Concepcion and Boston in the first 2 rounds, Smith went straight to social media and posted that someone on the Browns roster would be hiring a moving company sooner. Not naming who, but everybody with 2 working eyes knows exactly who he was talking about. And this is coming from a man who has years of documented history with Jerry Jeudy. For those who need the full backstory, back in 2023, Smith called Jeudy a jag on his podcast. That's just a guy, meaning an average player who was burning a first-round pick. Then during a Thursday Night Football broadcast, after Jeudy reportedly told Smith to back off in colorful language on the sideline, Smith went on national television and told the world that Jeudy was a tier 3 wide receiver, that he was mentally incapable of handling constructive criticism, and that he would personally tell any GM who called him to not trade for Jeudy. That was live on air, with millions watching legendary stuff from Asian 89. Then Jeudy went and had his Pro Bowl 2024 season, 90 catches, over 1,200 yards, and everybody thought Smith had to eat crow. Jeudy even went on a popular podcast in the summer of 2025 and basically said the beef was dead, that it was old news, that he had proved himself and knew who he was. And in that moment, he was right, he had proved something. But then 2025 happened, and 2025 was a disaster. And now the Browns just spent back-to-back premium picks on wide receivers who are going to compete directly for Jerry Jeudy's targets. And Steve Smith Sr. is back with a moving company joke. I genuinely cannot make this up. Now, let's talk about what all of this actually means for Shedeur Sanders, because that is the layer of the story that is not getting nearly enough attention. Shedeur Sanders is entering year 2. His rookie season was rough. The offense around him was not functional, the line was not protecting him, and his top receiver was dropping footballs at a historically bad rate. Fast forward to today, the Browns used their first 3 draft picks exclusively on the offensive side of the ball. An offensive tackle in round 1, a receiver in round 1, another receiver in round 2. That is a front office that is deliberately, systematically constructing an offense around their second-year quarterback. Todd Monken himself said after the draft that Boston gives them the size matchup and red zone presence they desperately lacked all of last season. Meanwhile, Concepcion is the quick-twitch slot weapon who creates easy underneath completions. Exactly the kind of player that helps a young quarterback build rhythm and confidence early in games. Think about what Shedeur Sanders is waking up to right now. He has Concepcion running crosses and drag routes in the slot. He has a 6'4" Boston as a legitimate jumbo target in the red zone. He has Harold Fannin Jr. at tight end, a guy who quietly became one of his most reliable connections down the stretch in 2025. And he still has a complementary deep threat in Jeudy, who, when he is locked in, can win vertically. That is a genuinely playable offense. And Dre's personal opinion, if Shedeur Sanders has a 2026 season that looks anything like what he showed in his best moments at the end of year 1, the Shedeur was a bust narrative disappears almost overnight. The weapons are there now. The line is being rebuilt. The excuses are running out for everyone in that building, including number 3 himself. Now here is where the story gets complicated, because despite everything I just laid out, the draft investment, the Berry spin session, the depth chart math, Jeudy is not going anywhere immediately. He is under contract through 2028 at over $17 million per year in average value, and that contract is actually reasonable in the current wide receiver market. The Browns are not cutting him. A trade is not imminent. He is still on this roster and he will report to training camp as a member of this team. But the question was never whether Jeudy is on the team. The question is whether he is still the guy. And based on everything that happened in this draft, the answer to that question is evolving faster than Andrew Berry's press conference prepared anyone for. Multiple analysts who covered the draft noted that the new rookie duo would likely absorb expanded roles immediately, and that the front office viewed Concepcion and Boston as more reliable options going forward than what Jeudy has shown over the past 12 months. That is a devastating assessment. That is not about age, that is not about scheme fit, that is about trust. And when a front office stops trusting a receiver to be their number 1 option, the depth chart follows whether the press conferences admit it or not. And Cedric Tillman, my guy, is probably already packing boxes, ironically enough, maybe borrowing Steve Smith's moving company recommendation. Multiple observers noted after the draft that Tillman, who managed just 21 catches last season, is the most logical roster casualty as Cleveland integrates 2 new premium wide receivers. If the Browns are keeping Jeudy for depth and continuity while building around Concepcion and Boston as the future, there simply is not room for everybody. The math does not work. Somebody leaves. Let me be completely straight with you for a second, because that is what we do here. There is a version of 2026 where Jeudy proves every single person wrong. There is a version where he comes into training camp with a chip the size of Lake Erie on his shoulder, outworks both rookies in every session, earns back his starting role through pure production, and forces Andrew Berry to admit that the bell cow level was accurate all along. That version is not impossible. Jeudy is 27 years old. He was a Pro Bowler just 2 seasons ago. He has legitimate route running pedigree from Alabama. He knows how to create separation at the line. He has every physical tool to compete at a high level. And now, critically, he has something he did not have in 2025, a full off-season where Shedeur Sanders is the unquestioned starter, where they can build real chemistry from day one without a quarterback competition clouding the entire operation. But here is the but, and it is a significant but. The drop problem has followed Jeudy for 6 NFL seasons. From Denver to Cleveland, across multiple offenses and multiple quarterbacks, the concentration issues have appeared at the worst possible moments. At some point, that pattern stops being situational and starts being structural. And Andrew Berry clearly sat down, looked at the film, looked at the numbers, and concluded that he could not build a 2026 playoff offense around the hope that a 27-year-old receiver finally fixes the most persistent flaw in his game. So he drafted the solution in round 1, and then he drafted another solution in round 2, and then he went to the microphone and called the problem his bell cow. That is the cold, unfiltered reality of the NFL. It does not happen with an announcement. It does not happen with a trade demand or a locker room blow-up. It happens with draft picks. It happens when a general manager uses premium capital to replace a player he is still publicly praising. The message gets delivered not through words but through selections. And Cleveland sent that message loud and clear on draft night. The crash out is still coming. Maybe not publicly, maybe not with a press conference or a tweet, but there will be a moment in training camp in the preseason when the official week 1 depth chart drops where Jerry Jeudy has to look at KC Concepcion running first team routes in the slot and Denzel Boston winning jump balls in red zone drills. And he will have to reckon with exactly what this organization thinks of his future here. That moment will reveal everything about who Jerry Jeudy is in 2026. Is he the guy who responds like he did after Steve Smith's original insults and puts up a career year? Or is he the guy who quietly becomes the overpaid veteran presence that the young guys are being groomed to replace? Either way, Shedeur Sanders wins, because whatever happens in that receiver room, Shedeur now has more legitimate NFL weapons around him than at any point in his professional career. The Browns bet on their quarterback, they committed resources to building around him, they addressed the offensive line, they attacked the receiver position twice in the first 2 rounds. That is an organization that has decided to go all in on their young signal caller. And that right there is the most important story coming out of Cleveland's 2026 draft. Not the drama, not the depth chart politics, and not even Steve Smith Sr.'s moving company jokes. The Browns are quietly, deliberately, and aggressively building to win, and Jerry Jeudy better figure out quickly whether he wants to be the bell cow who justified the faith or the cautionary tale that made all of it necessary. That's the breakdown right there. You already know what time it is. If this video gave you something to think about, smash that like button right now, hammer it into the floor, and drop your take in the comments. Is Jerry Jeudy still a legitimate WR1 in Cleveland, or is Steve Smith Sr.'s Tier 3 verdict about to age as perfectly as fine wine? I want every opinion down below. If you are not subscribed yet, what are you even doing here? Hit that subscribe button and ring that bell notification so you never miss a drop from Overtime Reports. I'm Dre Fiverr, no filter, no fluff, just facts. We'll see you on the next one.